morning. Welcome to a new week right here at Younib TV, and in a special way, welcome to the Morning Momentum. Of course, this is your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. I'll be your host, Alfonsoh. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines, but before then, we have a guest in studio, and we are going to decode matters taxation this morning. Of course, it's also a top story making the headline on the Standard, how not to bring down cost of living. Now, economy experts fault the president's approach taxation and cost of living, saying the policies will only sink the country deeper in mire and push many to avoid paying taxes, which will ultimately make life unbearable. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5 of the Standard this morning. Also, IEBC reforms versus right of representation. At least 7 regions are scheduled to hold by-elections. However, without a fully constituted electoral commission, Kenyans in these places go without a fundamental right. More of that story is also beefed up for you on the Standard newspaper this morning. Also, NEP leaders call for help amid flooding. That story is beefed up for you on page 6. Matters health, low sperm count, blame the phone. You'll take a look at that story on page 3. On national news, the winners and losers as dialogue team wraps up. That story is beefed up for you on page 2 of the Standard this morning. On the international news, being a mother in Gaza is a matter of life and death. That story is beefed up for you on page 32 of the Standard this morning. Let's take a look at the Daily Nation. The elephant in the room, the best 150 MPs. Now, a majority of Kenyans think MPs have performed well since they were elected into office last August, with Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro topping the charts according to a new Infotrack poll. But what have these legislators done to rank highly? That story is beefed up for you on page 2, 3, and 4 of the Daily Nation this morning. El Nino weatherman now warns of heavy rains in the country. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Also, UK envoy, we are open to talks on reparations. That story is beefed up for you on page 7. County news, 9 counties record surge in new HIV cases. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. In numbers, 17,680 are the new HIV infections among adults. 41% are aged between 25 and 34 years. That story is beefed up for you on the Daily Nation as well. Now, as I said earlier, we have a guest in studio this morning, and we want to decode matters taxation. Our topic this morning is going to be Kenya's taxation transformation. Now, as we take a short break to prepare our guest, please, you can join the conversation via our SMS line 0719144144 or via our social media platforms at Younib Media TV on Facebook and YouTube, and at Younib_TV on Instagram. See you on the other side of this broadcast. to the Morning Momentum. If you're just joining us, you are still rolling with the host with the most. Alfonsoh is my name. And right about now, as I said earlier, our guest is already seated, and let's delve into the conversation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Well, introduce yourself to our viewers and tell them who you are and what you do.
Silas Okoth. I'm a social pedagogue. I'm a leader, a youthful leader in the country. And for that matter, I belong to the Democratic Action Party of Kenya as a youth leader under the youthful wing in that party. And I'm very delighted for you to have me this wonderful morning so that we discuss the matters pertaining the heart of the country. Because with this taxation regime and all these matters, that is basically what is affecting the country, and it can define our second course of action as a country, whether we're going to succeed or we may fail in this journey.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, let us start with the most recent case that we saw, which was introducing tax to goods, any goods coming into the country above $500. $500 is approximately 75,000 Kenya shillings based on the current dollar rate. Is that supposed to mean that when I come from an outside country, say I have an expensive watch I bought from overseas, I have to be taxed for buying an expensive watch or for having an expensive iPhone, for example?
I think basically this regime is imposing some mechanisms that basically will not help the country. Because, for example, the one that you have just recently mentioned, we saw the Director General of the KRA trying to clarify what they meant, that now they are personal items, and again, they are now goods worth this price. So the question that we're left with is that, for example, I'm a visitor, the tourist, because Kenya prides itself for the tourist attraction sites in Africa and even the worldwide. People come to see the beauty of the country. But you're being told that on arrival in the country, there's some taxation on your item. So basically, despite the good serenity that we have in the country, people will even decide to go to other parts to also see these things that are in the country. Because literally, if 75,000, someone who is coming like a tourist coming from abroad, that's a penny. So definitely will come with goods worth more than that.
Yes.
So it's just a mechanism, first of all, to government is to make money. But the ordinary Kenya and internationally is also going to tarnish our reputation, that people will never consider coming to the country, because if you look at it, I'm coming and I'm being taxed to the last coin. Because even recently we saw people making clips and everything, that people are now walking naked. Because when you arrive with these clothes and everything, and even your personal belongings, then the rate of taxations and that which you are supposed to give the government is just beyond reproach. So I believe it was an ill-informed agenda, it's an ill-informed intention, and we beseech KRA so that they can make a negative move or just do away with that tax, because it's going to kill the country more than it's going to benefit us. So I think that's my take on that.
So how is this going to affect consumers and businesses?
Consumers and businesses, for example, if I'm trading in the textile industry, let's say, I can have the brothers and sisters who are abroad. If, for example, they deem it fit that some goods are worth to be used with their siblings or their mothers and everything, because this government prides itself, they say that they want to have that foreign affairs ministry and the diaspora. So if there's diaspora, because their main cause was to enhance this transfer, and transfer may not be necessarily on terms of money. I can be buying things there cheaply, then while they arrive the country, I open up shops and do this business here. That will not mean that I'm not going to pay tax in our jurisdictions. So I think goods coming, if I'm coming with my goods traveling with them, they may be gift. So I bought gift from abroad, then on coming to Kenya, I'm being now taxed for that gift. That one means that even that expensive or the quality thing that I've bought abroad, I'll have to come and maybe buy a substandard thing because I fear taxation. So apart from the image, even the business-wise, we're not going to thrive in the business sector, because it's going just to be not appropriate for you to manage that.
Now, hold on to that thought. We are coming back there in a moment. Let's take it back to the first kind of taxation that we saw when the government started all this stories about tax. It was about the affordable housing. So how can we say that that has been successful, or what has it done to the people who are renting out their plots, or how can we say that there is any form of change that has been seen?
So far, so good. I may not say it has not yielded much because, first of all, in my view and our coalition view, we hold it so dearly that it was an ill-informed agenda. Because literally, when you're talking about affordable housing, it's not a new thing in the country. Affordable housing was even done by the Grand Coalition government when His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga and Mwai Kibaki were the helm of the country. And these people had done affordable housing in places like Kibra, which was basically uplifting the slums. So even P.S. Inga, as I call him the sweating, because in May when he was trying to explain, there was a lot of sweats in State House. So P.S. Inga, while enrolling these things, clearly stated that, number one, they are not going to build these houses, but they are investors. Our money was only assurance to these people. So you find, if there are investors who have already volunteered to come and build these things, but they just want to be told that, like, our money is not going to waste. Not to stop it at that, of course, they have been lying to us and wrongly quoting Article 43 of the Kenyan Constitution. Just as like preachers misquote Bible, the government have also decided to misquote the Constitution. That Article 43 gives us right to housing. It is indeed there. We know that we have right to housing. But the procedure to get that house must be realized. For example, if you look at that tax, it was first at 3%. And 3% was, first of all, to the employee, and 3% to the employer. So if you have such like a tax regime, it means that if the employer was having a reasonable number of employees, he must cut them off. Because I'm going to pay for these people. And despite the employer paying for you, you yourself, again, you are being made the same deduction. So in other words, the double deduction. And if you deduct that one, it means that the money circulation in the economy is going to reduce. So you cannot purport that only one venture of the economy is going to make us succeed. Then, the second to that about the housing, there was also attached law to it. If you are, they also say that the rental income tax, they're going to reduce it from 10% to around 7.5%. That was good. And that was anticipated that the cost of these houses are going to come down. So if, for example, the government would have decided to measure into that direction, that now this rental income tax be reduced so that we look on the mechanism on how to reduce the tax, the burden on the common mananchi, that will support. But when you're now saying that you are building these houses and actually the people of Kenya are building it. And if you look at the provisions of what P.S. Inga was talking about, it talks of owning a house. And again, at the same time, there's registration. So for example, and they were telling that those houses will belong to Mama Mboga. How will Mama Mboga own a house when at the first place, Mama Mboga have not registered and is not paying that tax to build that house? Then they are saying that I can either withdraw after 7 years. They were to put it a leeway that if I want to invest there, I invest, because Kenyans are people that are being, some of them are being deducted in these housing levies and everything. So it was just an added burden to the common mananchi. And on their appealing issue of the job creation.
Well, what is the rationale behind the government's decision to increase taxation?
In their own view, they think that because that brings us the reasons why people should pay tax, even if we don't consider them increasing. It is because we need to have some certainty, like there's good health, good road, good educations, and all these things. That's why we pay taxes. But the government, President Ruto, on his own admission, said that we are doing this because we don't want to borrow. But if you look at the borrowing spree of President Ruto vis-a-vis President Uhuru Kenyatta, it's out there. I think by just 8 months into power, Ruto had borrowed, I think, 2.1 trillion. When you compare that with the Uhuru, that regime was around 484. So if you look at the intentions behind increasing of these taxations, was not well informed. We are just having a government that was seeking that we need to raise revenue. Well, that is primary role of government. You need to raise revenue. But now, do you raise revenue from a suffering mananchi and from their hustler nation? or the hustler narrative that they put to the Kenyans. They were telling us that they are actually raising taxes on the wealthy so that the poor can have a better life. But what is rolling out and now in the public domain is that the poor are suffering more than the rich. Because there is a book that I read done by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Robert says that there's the history of taxation and the power of cooperation. That when all these things come through, the government will always lie to the people. That is, we are going to take it from the rich and give it to the poor. But when the reality dawns, is that it's actually the poor who are going to suffer and the middle class. What is Robin Hood's theory in economics and the political, like you are looking for fame. So actually the government was looking for fame without realizing that where are we going to get funds to say tumetenga bilioni 10, tumetenga bilioni 100, tumetenga. So hizi kutenga zote have come to a point that now you must look for these funds. And to look for these funds, you must bring another lie to support the previous lie. You lied to Kenya that you're going to raise this, so you must bring another lie because an ordinary Kenya is not basically employed. So they're not going to pay this tax. But remember, this ordinary Kenyan is a maid to the teacher. This ordinary Kenyan is a watchman to this person. When you cut the money of this person or the salary of this person, it's going to have a trickle-down effect up to the groundsman. Think of driver in the roads. Think of any other person. So you'll find it's a multi-sectoral disadvantage vis-a-vis how they are being that if increased tax, things are going to be good. Even now, health sector, is it any good? We are still grappling. They told us NHIF is going to be 300. On coming to power, it was now increased to 2.2%, 2.27 for those who are employed. So basically, in my view and my analysis, the intentions to pay tax is a good one. But the intentions to raise tax for the government, even to fix the loans and everything, was just another propaganda that was peddled so that the people of Kenya would elect them into power. So we were lied for, and Kenyans must now open their eyes that the increase of these taxations was not a good decision. It remains a bad one, and it needs to be looked at.
Well, your sentiments are very much aligned, and you said something to do with intention. So what were the intended benefits behind this taxation or that we are seeing right now?
Number one, the intended benefit in their own admission, not ours as a coalition, in their admission was that number one intended benefit is that the people of Kenya are going to live a lavish life. That life, actually there is promise that the cost of living was going to come down. And for example, they brought a very good idea that now the fertilizer was going to be cheap in an attempt to reduce the cost of living. But on bringing that, you now increase taxation on what? You now introduce VAT on fuel. So are people of Kenya going to eat raw maize? They're not going to eat raw maize. This maize must go through a process. When we now call it maize flour, that can now be consumed in a household, it means that these things have gone through a process, and this process involved this production. So upon production being expensive, these things are going to be definitely expensive. So their intention to lower the cost of living has been proven for this 1 year. That was not a genuine one. It was political. You know, the politicians can come and sell anything to you. And for that matter, even the tweets from David Ndii speaks for themselves that Kenya is headed to a wrong direction. Actually calls Kenya in deathbed. And that is your economic advisor. Then the president contradicts that by saying we are headed towards the right direction. And the one that you employed as your economic advisor is taking it so in Twitter and everywhere, and even in interviews, that this thing is not working out. The country is headed towards a wrong direction. So we need to look at it. And it's my wish that the National Dialogue Committee give a right recommendation. Because if a right recommendation is not found, then we may suffer for eternity, not only 5 years, because this is a wrong base for this regime.
Of course, you've spoken about the bipartisan talks team. They had advised that increasing taxation is only going to make worse the cost of living. In your own opinion, how is this taxation matter going to affect the cost of living in the country?
First of all, the one thing that the bipartisan talk, and that one has been constantly said by His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, time without number, that the first intention was that we look on how we have subsidy to these things, because taxation was passed in Parliament. And that one again goes even in the newspapers. You've read how MPs are performed. It's an independent research. But now, if you look at it keenly and ask ordinary Mwana Kenya, that in your view, one of the fundamental rights of an MP is representation. This law was like everyone was against these tax proposals. But the Parliament went ahead and passed it overwhelmingly. That even our side as a meal, we had to walk out of the Parliament so that we can give them their way. As they say, the minority have their say, as minority have their way. We literally did it now, because on the fundamentals of the House, it could not be achieved. So when you're talking about now how this tax regime can lower cost of living is not realistic, because number one, the taxes have already been passed. As we speak, it's already a law. So that's why this National Dialogue Committee must come up with a clear recommendations. The path to glory. They must define a new path to glory. What Dr. William Samoei Ruto had promised us is not a new path to glory. So we are seeking that Kimani Ichung'wah and His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka-led team must come up with now recommendations and look at this tax years is there. Which other bylaws can we put in Parliament to elevate Kenyans, the suffering Kenyans? At least they can have a meal, because even now having 1 meal a day is a nightmare. So I believe like that National Dialogue Committee must come with the legal recommendations. That's why even after retreat, they had to call experts like Kwame Wino to come and shed light. Even by the admission, the budget controller, the control of the budget, on our own admission, is saying that these things are not working out. So if you look at it from any front, I think the government need to swallow their ego. As Osoro said, that the government has never been defeated. You are not defeated when you're doing the right thing, but you cannot fail not to be defeated, and you are injuring the people that put you there. So I believe the National Dialogue Committee must do some recommendations to save us under the Parliament. And actually, when this bill is being taken to the Parliament, this report, it must have some bylaws that must be done so that Kenyans can at least survive for the remainder of this financial year.
Are there any measures put in place to maybe mitigate the impact of this taxation on low-income earners in the country?
I'll say no. In my view, there are no mechanisms put or the mitigative measures that the government have put in place to ensure that at least we move on well. Because if there are, then even the cost of unga, the president said it's 150, but the reality is it's far away from 150. If you go to the cost of fuel, the other time they were on neck of CS Moses Kuria. When Moses Kuria just said the truth, because Moses Kuria sits in cabinet. If you say this thing is going to increase up to maybe February next year, it's not far away from the truth. That guy sits in cabinet. He's only speaking his mind. But now those who are in government were rebuking him by saying the truth. So I think if the CS can recommend that there's no measures, then it's truly there are no measures and mechanisms put in place to ensure that we arrive at this.
Okay, well, the conversation is getting heated up and it's becoming more amazing. I hope you are gaining insights in matters taxation as we are discussing this morning with our guest, Silas Okoth. We take a quick break and then we come back with more stories about taxation. Don't go away, because the best is yet to come.
Imagine waking up to a show every morning that entertains, educates,
that keeps you glued to the screen with interesting topics. Talk about health, fashion, business, fitness, and spiritual nourishment. Whether you're enjoying your cup of coffee, tea, milk, amaka uji, Younib Breakfast Show is the place to be. Every Tuesday and Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. with me, Penina Washara, here on Younib TV.
Welcome back to the Morning Momentum. We are discussing Kenya's taxation transformation. Our guest in studio is Silas Okoth. If you are just joining us, and I'm Alfonsoh. We are still rolling. Now, Silas, some argue that excessive taxation can cripple the economy of a country. So what is the government doing to ensure that these impacts of tax policies don't affect the normal day-to-day activities of the common mwananchi?
It is true, it's not just an argument. It's true that if you tax excessively, you are going to cripple the economy because of you have just demonstrated. Once you tax, it means the small business cannot thrive. The business, the macroeconomic sphere of it, that if you now look at the economy wholesomely, that these small vendors, the mamambogas that they were talking about, the border sector, talk about the transport sector, come to the manufacturers. All these sectors put together come up with now what we call now the macroeconomic effect in the country. So if you don't get it right for these small ventures, then it means the government will not get that money. And upon the government failing to get that money, it means definitely we are on the road to damage. So if, for example, they continue with this taxation, that now each and every day a new tax is introduced, we are basically going to have a point, because even the transport sector, we have seen the Matatus Owners Association speaking, we have seen drivers speaking, we have seen literally everyone complaining about these things. All Kenyans cannot be wrong. So this excessive tax is actually crippling the economy. If you look at the rate of inflation, it's just on the rise. So even however flowery language they give us, it is clear and evident that this regime, this high taxation that they are imposing on Kenyans is actually affecting us. For example, production cannot be produced. Electricity, cost of electricity is high. Even a kinyozi guy must now increase the cost of shaving. If you look for the salonist, they'll speak the same. Anything, there was a time they were even in the same proposals that the weaves and the wigs, when being imported, taxation must be imposed on them. So even ladies were wondering that even these things that we put on so that we can look very elegant are now also becoming costly. So a government that is looking for a single coin from a common mwananchi, and there's a famous wisdom that speaks that you cannot tax, you cannot pickpocket a naked man. Basically, Kenyans are naked. How do you pickpocket a naked man? We have been taxed to the last. So excessive taxation is just going to cripple us, the households, poverty levels. Actually, the reports will speak for itself. The poverty index will just rise. We have talked even in the newspapers about the HIV rocking. These are just alternative mechanisms that now these young people look for. Well, that's for barbers and everything, because the economy itself is not working. So this new prevalence of all these diseases and everything are not just because the economy is tough. So I look for alternative. I get someone I don't consider. So this thing is going to injure us more than it could cure our disease. Yes, Uhuru Kenyatta left us with some diseases, we must admit. But prescribe a prescriptive drugs. Don't give us painkillers and lies. Tell us that for us to cure this thing, the following must be done. But these people are telling us that for us to cure this thing, just take this dose. And the dose is not consultative. It's a dose that is being prescribed without the patient speaking. The doctor tells you, nimekuona wewe unahitaji malaria. Ni kama uko na malaria. Hajafanya test. So it speaks for itself that these people, before they prescribe a medication, they must consult the patient and the patient to speak, and the patients can tell you the regime is actually putting them.
Clearly, we've not seen any form of public participation in all these decisions, and we are hoping that maybe before they implement some more, there will be public participation engagement. So maybe, if I may ask, what are the implications of job creation based on what you just mentioned?
The implication of job creation is that we cannot create that job. Those jobs cannot be created in the country. On, I think, 1st of May, the Labor Day, I saw Dr. Ruto making a speech in presence of labor union workers like Atwoli. And he said very well that Kenyans, he was only speaking of jobs in US, jobs in United Kingdom, and there's a president speaking, meaning president in his own admission, the jobs cannot be created in this country. Therefore, it's even literally the other time he said Saudi Arabia, their jobs, Dubai, kuna kazi, because this job creation is not realistic. He was telling us that they're going to create job creation on what? Affordable housing. But according to Kenya Bureau of Statistics, the report says that in Kenya we have 14 million households. If we have 14 million households, and these people are telling us these 14 million households have never created these jobs, and Dr. Ruto is just promising us that he's going to build 250,000 households per year. But he's saying that this one is going to create employment. So literally, job creation is a no. Number two, as I said earlier, if, for example, you are employed and 1.5% of your money is going on tax, and they call it fund. It is the finance tax, but they're calling it what? Fund. That is the house levy fund. This fund is going there. Your employer is also doing it. So even if employer will consider employing 15 people, he will have to cut 5 and maybe remain with 7 or 10. Because now, vis-a-vis the agreement, because again, if I agree with you that you're going to pay me 50,000, you cannot start coming and now saying that because of the tax, I'm not going to cut your salary. So what the employers will do, they're going to send off some people. They're going to resize their companies, downsize and everything, so that these companies can have a reasonable number of employees that they can manage. And with that, employment is not going to be there. The business sectors, for example, the turnover tax that they just introduced, initially, the lower rank was like, it was at around 1 million. Now they're saying that if you have a turnover revenue of around 500,000, you're going to be taxed. So just take around 500,000, divide by 365 days. We come with approximately around 1,300. So anyone who earns or business generates 1,300 is going to pay a tax of around 3%. It was not there. The content creators that have created job opportunity, the online taxations and everything, you find is a whole messed up system. Because if the government cannot offer, the private sector should. And the private sector, the Commission on Manufacturers and everyone have talked that this tax regime is not bearable. So if your employer, like these people that are employing, are coming and saying this tax regime is not bearable, in other words, they're telling you that, guys, you need to hold on. We are not going to employ you. And even the deputy president himself admitted, I believe, in the JQuat, when there was graduation, that hatuna kazi yenyu, we don't have jobs for you. Mtaenda mfanye huko kwa mjengo. And not everyone is an expert. So when you're talking about this issue, is literally pinching the people, the Republic of Kenya. And we need to have a sober debate concerning this tax regime, the employment issues, because the employment is not a one-day talk. The percentage is just like now this year, we have seen like almost all universities, colleges, and everything have done their graduations. What next?
Those are over 10,000 people.
Over 10,000 people
coming to the job market
are being pumped into the economy that the deputy president have admitted there are no jobs. The president is telling you, work kwa mjengo. In other words, if you cannot work kwa mjengo, he's taking you abroad. And you have seen what is happening in Saudi Arabia. Which parent in his sane mind will take the people to Saudi Arabia that have negotiated 500,000 jobs? When now the king is here, some days the king coming, now there are not 500,000 jobs, they have come to 350. So they are mere roadside declaration. You have a president that declares policies on roadside. The policies should be in a powerhouse, that these people sit in a cabinet and come up with a formidable process that they're going to do to Kenyans. But we don't have a president that when he's in Nairobi, he speaks this. When he's in Kisumu, he speaks this. For example, when he walked to those sides of Nyanza. There are a lot of things he said, including on Tuesday, I'll go to speak to Honorable Museveni about the issue of the fishermen. That one did not materialize. We are still waiting for that Tuesday. So we have a president that speaks policies by the roadside. And that is so bad of our future, most of the youth. Because they all, they may say we have lived enough to see our grandchildren, to see our children, to see our nieces and everything. But now, this coming generation, from the university funding and all these things, from the high schools, fees and everything, is just going to be unbearable. CBCs and all these things. Literally, we have a country in deathbed. But if you don't look at it keenly, the employment, education will be to expand your mind. And even if you think of starting business, the taxes are there. So we are going to have a begging nation going forward.
Well, let's sample a few sentiments here. We have Steve Ouma saying, I had no idea about these new taxes. Thanks for shedding light on this issue. Brilliant. We have Maya Njeri who says, I'm concerned about the impact on the cost of living, but let's tighten our belt, keep the conversation going. All right. There is also somebody here by the name Norbert Moore who says the discussion is a wake-up call for all Kenyan citizens. Knowledge is power. We also have Ada Chieng saying, ask Silas, what measures can the government take to ensure that tax revenue is used efficiently and transparently? I think we'll give you time to answer to that. We also have... who is this? Japheth Ochieng saying, ask Silas, are there any upcoming tax reforms or changes on the horizon that we should be aware of? Okay, we start with the question of Ada Achieng. What measures can the government take to ensure that tax revenue is used efficiently and transparently?
First of all is public participation. You don't just take money to where the citizen does not want it. For example, as a country, if you'll ask us now, we would want more than just this money being pumped into the housing. Because literally every Kenyan have a place to sleep. They are not talking that they're building houses for the street boys or street kids. They're not building children's home. They're building homes for adults who basically stays in this city and are prepared in this city. The other time we talked about that these houses are going to be in the city. Because 65% of Kenyans by 2050 will be in city. But now the reality is even building them deep in the rurals because it's just a political process. How can I get support from these people? So the first measure that should be done is that public involvement in the preparations of these things. And in this public participation, I think is something that we are not addressing it adequately. Remember, a document like BBI was just stopped by court because of public participation. So if BBI could be stopped because of public participation, but we have a tax, a full tax that is going to impact on our life for all financial year, already we are experiencing the difficulties, but there was no adequate public participation. And public participation is geared by the president and the cabinets. They come and tell you why it is good. They don't tell you what they intend to do. You know, when you tell me what I intend to do, then I tell you what I want, then we can come to some consensus that this is actually what we need to do now. But by coming and telling us, this is what we need to do, to metenga hii, we need to do this, is actually misleading the country. So one of the ways to ensure there's transparency is, first of all, public participation. Number two, the buck stops with the president. The buck stops with the president. These corruption cases, he must stop them. Due diligence must be done. Those who are corrupt and have been found deemed of any illegal acquiring of anything. You remember the sugar scandal? The sugar that had mercury in 2018, 2019 was found in the market this year because just some cartels wanted to do away with the process. So when you're talking about this transparency, it must be touched to the corruption cases that we have in the country. What are we doing with this corruption? When the president just came into power, all the people that were arrested during Kenyatta regime were equipped with these cases. So we are having a state capture, as the deputy president will call it. He said that there is a state capture. It is true, there is a state capture. When even you see what Kanjos even does in Nairobi and everything, it speaks volume that this participation, public participation is needed. You may have a good idea. That transparency must be likened to these people, then the issues of corruption must be fought the last call. Even if it's Guyanese, arrest him. Let the law take its charge. But we have a president that speaks on everything. He's a judge, he's a prosecutor, and the president is even a meteorological department. The other time he dispute, Mungu ametusaidia, hii El Nino tena iko. It is also a pastor in all these circumstances. So if you look at it keenly, we have one person that is playing all roles. So literally, if you want to look at this issue, the country must have some sober discussion. And to respond to Etienne, is that transparency must be likened to corruption. You cannot say Nani is not corrupt. You are not an investigative agent. We know there's presidential tenure, immunity. You cannot be sued in court. Well, but those who can be sued, let them be sued. Don't defend them. So I believe that is the first step, that the corruption things, and these anti-corruption agencies. The good Bishop Emeritus, Oginde, is now at ESCC. Stop witch hunt. Let Oginde work. The other time Oginde was with Oparanya, the former governor of Mombasa and Azimio co-principal, was arrested. She found how many billions. The case is nowhere to be seen. And actually, before the ESCC spoke, Aluale was everywhere on Twitter posting what was found in Oparanya's house. And Aluale is not an investigative agent. It speaks of a collapsed system. We don't have a distinction. The doctrine of separation of power was done by someone in French called Montesquieu, that gives parliament its roles, gives executives their roles, and Montesquieu also gives the judiciary their roles. And on that parking, the parliament should be supreme. But if you find someone who should defend devolution, defending a bad process like Aluale posting how ESCC have found 1 billion Kenyan shillings in a safe custody, was it there? So it speaks that the government does not have mechanism of transparency, because what ESCC does is not genuine. ESCC does things on account that the president is there. They are working for president, not the people of Kenya. And if you don't fight corruption, transparency remains to be a different language in our dictionary as a country.
Okay, Ada, I believe you are satisfied with the kind of answer you got. We move to the sentiments that were asked by Japheth. Are there any upcoming tax reforms or changes on the horizon that we should be aware of?
You know, as I said, this is not a regime that respects public participation. This is not a regime that values the ideas of the people. If the taxes, even this one on the travelers, was just done the other day. Actually, we saw it on Twitter as a joke. Then all of a sudden, we see these people defending it. So even if there are tax reforms, I'm sure they're not going to leave to Kenyans. They're just going to come one day, implement it, before Kia Mtata runs to court, because that is synonymous. We know that they implement, Kia Mtata goes to court, court takes 4 or 5 years to handle the case, the matter goes like that. So that is the sad part of our country. So now I can speak that they have, because they have said the country is collapsing. And that's your advisor.
What are the compliance challenges faced by businesses in all this?
The businesses, one, most what they have done right must also be told. This online filing of taxes and everything, and the e-citizen stuff is a good plus, because that does not need me even for these services like KRA services to walk onto these offices and do everything, you know. But now there are people that are not that tech. They don't have the knowledge of the technology. Mama Mboga, they say, who has a Katululu phone. How is this Mama Mboga going to comply to these taxes? Are you saying it will again take Mama Mboga to go to cyber? The cyber charges are high. So even that little that he was getting to comply to taxes is going to be expensive by just filing that tax. So that's why I was telling you that once you affect this sector, it is going to affect all this sector. This person is not having this knowledge. He must go to a cyber. The cyber guy, electricity is high. Internet connection is high. They promised us those Wi-Fis and everything. We're yet to see. All those things are high. If you look at it keenly, you will find that at the end of the day, the cyber guy is going to charge expensively. So even complying to these taxes is not easy. We see the Rai people, those who are working in Mumias, the same problem president, Mr. Know-it-all. Dr. Ruto came, and what did Dr. Ruto say? All these things, huyu jamaa vitu tatu, mambo ni matatu. The court cases had to be withdrawn. So we are speaking of the same problem. Compliance is not easy. Because if I have not complied to tax, is it Dr. Ruto to speak to me, the president? Or is the KRA to follow up on me? Of course, Dr. Ruto have intelligence, courtesy of National Intelligence Service. They have that. But should you speak of those things publicly? You cannot handle all sectors. So the question of compliance must also be likened with the willingness of the people. Because I only comply if these taxes are helping me. For us to increase tax volume, services must be there. For example, I can only pay taxes if I'm using good roads. I can only pay taxes if there's water in that market. But if the government have not provided amenities, the market is not built, and you are taxing me so highly, that is what is going to bring the issue of what non-compliance to the taxes. Because I'm asking myself, why should I pay these people maybe even 50 more per day when my customers are working on mud? When my customers are working on water, actually, flooded places like markets. So non-compliance is akin to the services that are being offered by the state. If the state offer good services, we, the people of Kenya, will comply to those taxes. But if that is not happening, definitely not.
So then what is the government doing to make sure that these challenges that people face when they want to comply to tax are addressed? What is the government doing about these compliance challenges?
The compliance challenge, just as I said earlier, the only thing that they have made easy for the literate, those who are literate, is the e-citizen. At least you can go there, study, and understand what to do. But for the ordinary person who does not understand these things, there's little. Because how many times have you seen KRA holding seminars? You only see KRA on headlines when they have increased tax. You only see KRA on headline when they are following for those that have not complied. But you don't see KRA on headline teaching Kenyans on the importance of this taxation. How many seminars, for example, have you seen even here in Nairobi, KRA holding? None. We only see KRA goods worth 75,000 Kenyan shillings must be taxed at the entrance of the country. Housing levy must be done. This and this company have not complied. The high company have done this. Cases on court. We only see KRA on court and headline for the obvious reasons. But you don't see KRA on increasing. Because again, for you to increase tax volume, there must be information and knowledge. If I have knowledge why I'm doing this, then definitely I'm going to do it willingly. But for example, I don't have knowledge why I should pay 1.5% of my salary to build the affordable housing. I'm messed up. So the knowledge and everything is what government should embark on. And for that matter, the KRA should embark on that one seriously for us to be elevated, for us to notice all these things, and for us to achieve our desired goal.
Okay, can you shed some light on the role of public participation in implementation of these tax policies?
The role of public participation, try to yield some small fruits, if I must speak. Number one, remember the 1.5 was not 1.5. 1.5 was supposed to be 3%, the housing levy. Then after public participation, we saw the medias in the country, the Azimio Fraternity, the Kenya manufacturers, the Institute of Economic Kenya led by Kwame Owino and all these people were out there to tell Kenyans on the bad issues in this tax that was presented to us. By seeing that, at least we saw them making some break from 3% to 1.5%. Again, for the content creator, it was at 15%. They had to move from 15% to 5%. So there was some little efforts by the members of the public to raise this thing. You see people like Eric Omondi were arrested a number of times in the streets, trying to bring unga. And by that, even Eric Omondi was trying to educate Kenyans and these content creators on why this 15% was going to injure them more, which was basically the role of this KRA and stuff to come and tell us all these things, why this is necessary. And the Treasury, because Treasury have done a proposal. The proposal by Professor Junguna was that we need this tax. Professor Junguna must go and elaborate why do we need this tax. But Professor Junguna never did that. Neither did you see TNT, the Treasury, coming up and telling us all these issues. So there are issues that if Kenyans would have been silent, if our democracy will be that, not a mature democracy as we are growing to realize it, Kenyans will shut up, Kenyans will have not listened to anything, But I'm happy that that public participation is actually in the Constitution. If you look at Article 10, what is not clear that I believe even it was to be looked at the national dialogue is that this public participation is anchored. But what qualifies something to be sufficient public participation? Because again, you can have 3 people and you will tell us you had public participation. So the threshold for public participation is still not clear in the Constitution, because we need to have public participation. If, for example, president is on top of a lorry or on top of a V8 and talks to people, that's public participation. But do the members of the public talk to him, or he talks to the members of the public? So the threshold for public participation must be put even in this national dialogue committee recommendation, so that we come to realize it, that this and this are the things that are happening, and this must be done this way for us to achieve this. Yeah.
Are there any international comparisons that we can maybe refer to when it comes to tax policies implementation?
Yes, there are. Because if we are a net exporter to Uganda, currently we import much from Uganda. Number one reason is the rate of production there is low. Are you seeing? The rate of production there is low. The fuel there is low. Yet Uganda is a landlocked country. We have a lot of access to these things. But if you look at the tax policy there, even just look at our money and their money. We are talking just of dollar. Look at our money by last year and look at Uganda, the buying and exchange of that currency. You realize that Uganda may be doing better than us. Tanzania is looking stable here, just next to us. The fuels and everything. Are we the only people that are affected by Ukraine-Russian war? Of course, when we are speaking about these things during the election, they told us it has nothing to do with Ukraine and Russia. Ni mandugu hawa wawili wa handshake. Now handshake is no more, it's 1 year. Settle down and lead the country. So if you look at comparison, Rwanda and all these countries are doing better because they have a clear tax policy. But ours keep changing on the venue that the president is. If we can have a tax policy that is better to all of us, but you find when president meets the coffee farmers, he speaks flowery language. When it comes to Nyanza fishermen, he speaks flowery language. When it comes to coast, he speaks another different thing. So we have a moving tax policy. But if you can have a concrete tax policy, written, documented, that can be followed to the letter. They told us the plan. The plan is no more. The plan keep changing. Because if I have a plan that I want to go travel maybe to town, I must know from this place to this place, I'm taking this car, dropping at this place, and yearly. And plan must be long-term, short-term, and medium-term. You can only tell us that mtaona after 5 years. You must have a short-term plan. The quick wins that he told us in 100 days, unga to 100, all these things, are they there? They are not there. So literally, when you're talking about our comparison with other countries, presidents sit down and settle. If truly you won, then you need to sit down and settle, not campaign. Because if you won legitimately, then there's no need to tell us and chase time, hawa nilituanga, hawa nilifanya nini. Work for the people so that courtesy of what you have done, they're going to elect you overwhelmingly. But currently, as we see things, you are reminding us that you are duly elected. You are reminding us that Nyanza never gave you vote. You are reminding us that what Costa wako simama na wewe. The deputy is reminding us of shareholding capacity. And these things is what they call policy. When they meet coffee, when they meet sugarcane, when they meet everyone, they have a different policy. But there's no a concrete national policy. The moment we have a concrete national policy, tax policy, development policy, all these policies, we are going to get it right. But if the president is the policy, the deputy president is the policy, the cabinet ministers are the policies, then they must bring those thoughts together and document it. In their plan, they are far away from the plan. They released a good plan, we must say, but that plan is far away from being realized.
All right, let's take a few more sentiments and as we wrap up the show. Now, I have somebody here by the name Elvis Doso who says, I believe you know Doso, this is someone I know. I hope the government is listening and will address the concerns raised on the show, all right? Also, we have Mohammed saying, kudos for addressing the impact on businesses and jobs, keep it up. Now, as we conclude the show, we spoke about tax education awareness.
Yes.
So what measures are being taken, if there is any, to make sure that Kenyans are aware of these taxation issues, what is supposed to be done, when and how?
I think we must say kudos to the medias like yours are doing more than the government is doing. That must be said in black and white. Even these people that people are talking about, it's only the media that bring them to light in the country, but not the state. So when you're talking about tax education, like the session that we're now having, we are trying to enlighten us. The viewers are telling us, we are also sharing knowledge with them. But you find this is only done in the media, and actually, for that matter, private media. I'm not attacking any media. If you look at maybe the government-owned entities, they are fixed with that. So when we're speaking about all these issues of tax education, first of all, I said the KRA must pull up their socks to public engagement. The Treasury must come up and pull up their socks. The budgetary committee in the parliament led by Ndidi Nyoro, that the research shows has performed well. Okay, Ndidi Nyoro is eloquent when he speaks, but he speaks the state's language. Are you seeing? Because he was even defending this tax regime. So even those who are voting, maybe it be because of Mutuetu. Because if this tax regime is like that and you are being voted the best with 70%, then there are a lot to be known how that voting happened. Because you are at the end of implementing these things. The Kimani Kuria, for example, led committee of the finance in the National Assembly. If you look at all these committees, they must do beyond that. For example, Kimani Kuria's committee being in Nairobi, and someone have an issue in CIA, for example, where I come from, how will Kimani Kuria committee meet that person? So we must have a multi-sectoral agency deployed at least in all these 47 counties, as they were talking about. They're having around 47 charters. These charters, they brought what people in CIA. They were telling us that their economic team worked in 47 counties, and each and every county said what they wanted. Let them do the same with the knowledge, the tax information. Why do we need to tax? What is in store for you? For example, other countries like Brazil, even these footballers earn a lot, but they pay at least 40% of their tax because you live in a free house, your children go to free schools. Even if you remain with 40% of your salary, it's enough for you. It's just for enjoyment and meals, which are meals again are affordable, but they're even street meals and stuff. So even if taxes are high to what level, so long as the services are there, people will not cry. But people will often cry because they are paying taxes and the services are not there. So the first information, you must tell us the services in store. Then you tell us that for us to realize this service, we need to have this tax in place. And those taxes must be reasonable, because Article 47, I believe so, if I'm not wrong, talks about administrative action. Administrative action must be simple. But complex things that are common, mwananchi, mama mboga, mtu wa bodaboda cannot understand, that is complexity. And on its own, it's just not going to help us. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming to the show. And to you, our viewers, many thanks for choosing to stay with Younib TV. This has been the Morning Momentum with yours truly, Alfonsoh. Many thanks to also to all those who made this broadcast a success. Elias Muchina behind the cameras, and the chief controller, Anifa Kavira. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful and a fruitful week.